All right. Good morning. Thanks for all who are joining now, and we appreciate you being on time. So just give us a few more minutes, and we'll get the webinar started. Once again, good morning. Thank you all for joining us. Just 2 more minutes. We want to make sure we have other participants who are going to join today, and we'll get this started in a bit. Thank you. All right, so I guess we will get started. So once again, good morning. Wherever you are, it's a beautiful sunny day here in Dallas. I just wish and hope the same for you. So thank you all for joining us today. Appreciate it. So let me just start with a quote that I read that I think really resonates today with the topic that we have chosen. It's from Charles Darwin, and it says, "It is not the strongest or the most intelligent who will survive, but those who can best manage the change." So I think that speaks volumes for what we're trying to address today as part of the webinar topic. So thanks again for being on time, for joining the session on change management. Engage, educate, and empower your workforce. So that's the topic. So as you know, we've gone through many of these IT implementations ourselves, whether it's software or hardware changes in our enterprises. So we do understand, right? The successful enterprises are those that know that managing the people side of the organization change is as important as implementing or upgrading the technology. So over 70% of enterprises around the world have said that having an effective user adoption was the most important factor in realizing value. So when you put a high priority on helping people, workforce, your own employees to do their jobs better, when adopting to a new technology, you can ensure that your transformational projects will meet your business objectives and you can achieve your intended ROI. So having the right change management approach is no brainer. I think every project should have it. And we are going to cover that in depth today. My name again is Kishore. I'm Kishore Gundala. I'm the practice head for SAP at Tachyon Technologies. I have over 20 plus years of experience in application management and implementation, delivery, solution delivery, and also which kind of combines change management into that. So, and today we have Alan, who is one of our solution architects and also change management experts. And I call her the Oprah of change management. So with that, let me hand it over to Alan. Why don't you introduce yourself, Alan, and let's get this started.
Thanks, Kishore. Like Kishore, I have about 20 plus years in the field of delivering and designing change and training solutions for adult learners. And most of those have centered around applications like SAP and similar. I really enjoy talking about user adoption, and I'm glad to be joining this webinar today. Next slide. Thanks. So we're going to be going over what are the key aspects of user adoption and how do you measure it? How do you achieve it and measure it? There are challenges to doing so, typically on these projects, and we'll talk about the challenges as well as how to overcome them. And finally, we're going to end with a discussion of measuring your own organization's ability to assess change as well as the readiness for change. Next slide, please.
All right. So with that, before we begin, right, Alan, so let me ask a quick polling question. Mm-hmm. Let's see what everybody thinks about this. So have you ever held a role related to user adoption? And this is open question to all the participants today. And you should be seeing a little pop-up come up, right? There it is. So try to choose an answer and hit submit. And we'll get to the results in a bit. All right.
I think
that's enough time.
Okay.
So can we see the results? All right, Alan.
Great.
I'll let you look at them.
Okay, great. Thank you. It looks like about 2/3 of the people on the call currently hold a role related to user adoption, or else used to, or believe that everyone in the organization is responsible for it. So that's a good benchmark for me to understand as we proceed with the talk conversation today. Thanks so much for everyone's responses. So we're going to move into the first sort of subset of the talk, and that's how to drive and accelerate adoption. Next slide. This is both pointing to the changes that we've all experienced this year, as well as those in the workplace. I think we all understand that kind of the pace of acceleration of change has increased, but some of it is unplanned, and some of it we're just presented with in a situation like 2020. And I believe when we were all in the midst of adjusting to the lifestyle changes of working from home, the workforce started to demand ways to learn in the flow of work. We couldn't anymore get together for multiple live sessions to train users. So we looked for ways to present and make accessible, useful content to users, specifically where it pertains to getting proficient on software applications, websites, and apps. So the term digital adoption platform is something I wanted to introduce here. You can create custom content, and you can also embed off-the-shelf content in many applications, including SAP. SAP offers some solutions for this, and then you can also embed other content you create, your users create, using third-party tools. And these solutions can typically take you across the platforms as well. They're not just SAP specific, but they can be used across your enterprise. So lots of uses for digital adoption platform content in engaging users. Next slide, please. I like this pyramid graphic because, again, it kind of depicts the levels of autonomy for what we call a distributed workforce. If you think of us being down, at the bottom, some work cannot be performed unless it's in person, face to face. But many types of work, especially in the knowledge economy, can be done distributed and remotely. But organizations go through kind of a struggle to get to fully accepting and integrating people that are all working at a distance from each other. We may grudgingly tolerate it at first, then we accept the reality of it, but still we're kind of challenged by our productivity as an organization because we have lots of interruptions in our day, like meetings and IMs. At level 3, we're kind of really reaching an acceptance that the remote workforce can be the norm, and project teams are a great example of this. Today, most project teams I know of implementing technology optimize their collaboration asynchronously. They pass requests, tasks, and approvals back and forth like a baton. At level 4, you're basically acknowledging that you have an asynchronous partnership with your coworkers and your collaborators. And level 5 says, hey, if you're remote, you may actually be more productive in the workplace than less. So it's an acceptance, and it's actually a kind of a celebration of the improvements that a remote workforce can bring to the table. So just thought it was good food for thought in this discussion today. Next slide. Organizations are made up of people, and as individuals, as an individual, I appreciate this model for change because it talks about what each stakeholder needs. Every person, every stakeholder needs clarity around the reasons for the changes in their workplace. And they need to be engaged to discuss what is being asked of them, assigned to them, or required of them to make this organizational change successful. People need a path for growth, one that will give them the knowledge, the skills, and new abilities that they need to be successful and to make their teams succeed. And finally, they need to know who will be their partners moving forward. Who can they call on when they have help? They have questions and they need assistance. Will there be super users or coaches, change agents that they can reach out to? Will they be given new performance goals, perhaps, by their managers? So let's look at the key aspects of user adoption. I think we should be asking ourselves if we want to achieve a return on investment for our adoption of SAP and other enterprise solutions, can we answer and measure these questions? How quickly are people up and running on the new system? What percentage of your employees or your workforce are actually demonstrating buy-in and using the system as planned? And how well are people performing? Are they doing the work that you expected them to do before the change occurred? In other words, if you benchmark, is it better than it was before? Next slide, please. Continuing on that topic of ROI, another data point for ROI being driven by adoption is shown in this survey that was done by TSIA. The takeaway is, what good is a software development or a deployment that delivers on the business requirements, but doesn't plan or execute to offer at least one, if not multiple channels to enable user adoption? Not just to hope it happens, but to actually enable adoption. So simply put, if you ask me what user adoption requires, I'd say you need to engage people. The sponsors are pretty important, but they're not the only ones we need to engage. Sponsors do give us extreme visibility into the organization's readiness for change. Sponsors will share with us details that we need to know about the rest of the workforce. But secondly, we need to design education resources to be accessible and helpful. We talked about that digital adoption platform content. If you're lucky, you will find people that will come to you typically in your organization, folks that want to be more involved in the design and creation of education content. So engagement and education supports an empowered workforce, and empowerment leads to adoption. So I think these ideas go hand in hand, and that's why we titled the webinar today as we did. Let's wrap up this section of the presentation by highlighting some key benefits of a user adoption strategy. There are many, but the ones I keep returning to are improved workforce productivity. Who can argue with that? I mean, that's really what we're striving for in any transformation. And also improved satisfaction with the solution. I haven't just grudgingly accepted it, but I embrace it. I see the benefits, they're working for me. I get it. That's the improved satisfaction levels. So leading to the next part of the presentation is the next slide, please. Challenges. Challenges of accelerating adoption and how to overcome those challenges. We'll give some tips and secrets here. And maybe before, as I start here, Kishore, there's lots of war stories, certainly. About a year and a half ago, we were supporting a global rollout of SuccessFactors to a very rapidly growing call center or operation. And they were challenged with trying to roll out SuccessFactors and let people know around the world what the changes were going to be. And we decided not to get very elaborate, but to just focus on providing question and answer sessions in local languages and translating some key content for managers of the call centers around the world. So we acquired knowledgeable bilingual consultants who could facilitate Q&A webinars, and we translated content, and we made people feel prepared before the change happened to them. Again, this was a really rapidly growing company. They were on a tight timeline. And so a lot of the challenges were, we had to make the best of the situation.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. By the way, Alan, I just wanted to quickly ask you, you talked about the sponsors being very important as part of the management approach. And going back to some design principles, you have diversified. So it's not only the sponsors, people who actually are change champions, right? Who drive that change within the organization. So again, especially in this time and being remote, how do you think that team should be formed? Change champions and various other roles that may be part of that approach.
I think it's important to identify candidates to be change champions or super users, either or, but whatever name you might be calling them, that represent the different levels of the enterprise as well as the different geographies. And then here's the key. I mean, you really do need to onboard change champions. There's a little sub program for them to prepare them to be your extended team. Because it can't all be centered on one person. This network of change champions can go forth and spread the word. They can be taught how to facilitate Q&A, work with teams, et cetera. But they have to be prepared, and they have to be incented actually to do this, because this is an extra. You might say it's an honor to be a change champion, but it's also work. So you have to incent them to do that work.
Right. I mean, different geographies, different teams, different roles. So everybody doesn't need to be a manager, right? You want to get people who are actually hands-on, and maybe some managers, so different mix. So good point.
Right.
Good. Thank you.
You're welcome. So many of these challenges that are up here in the colored bubbles come from different levels of the organization, users, as well as other stakeholders, and also project teams. They all have opinions on why it's difficult to design and develop user adoption solutions. Project teams, not surprisingly, often feel the lack of time, the lack of budget, and they feel not knowledgeable enough in tools to create engaging content. Like, hey, I'm doing my project team work, and now you're asking me to create interesting, engaging user content too. You know, what the heck? I need help. On the flip side, the people they're creating the content for, the users, often notice the gaps. It's not relevant to me. It looks cookie cutter. It's really not very helpful, and it's hard to find. So these are typical objections that people come up with to explain why they didn't achieve the adoption on the time frame they expected to or were asked to. So people essentially often regret the fact that there wasn't a plan in place. So, good segue. What is the first thing that I would suggest to counteract these challenges? Begin with a plan. Commit to a change management plan, which may also include a section on training and education, or it may be that these are two dovetail plans, change management and training. Either way, you have the option at the beginning of a project to use a knowledgeable and available resource in-house, or secure a partner to help you do this plan. But assess your transformation and put together a plan that is tactical enough to support adoption that you want on the timeline you want. It outlines the risks and it outlines your cultural readiness for the change. So, step one, plan. Next slide. Step two, as we said before, engage with your sponsors. Find time to meet with key sponsors of any initiative and talk frankly with them about what the transformation, what their vision is, what it should look like, what's their vision of success. And will they help, will they commit to finding the time to help the organization weather the changes? Find out how they'd like to remain involved, identify the roles they can play, and then set up recurring checkpoints to continue engaging with your sponsors. Next slide. Secret number 3. Now, regarding education, training, or learning, whatever you prefer to call it, don't revert to it being a box checking event. It's no longer really an event because in my mind, any modern learning situation for a migration to the cloud will blend elements of on-demand access. That's things that users can find online when they need it on the job. And they'll blend this with live discussions. You may already have tools you can use in-house to create, or learning experts who can help you envision how to create the content that your users need. Or you may want to explore purchasing a tool or two that will help support not only this initiative, but future initiatives. Spread the cost of any investment you make in a digital adoption platform, for example, or another tool across multiple initiatives. Don't just say it's just for this one we're in now.
Hey, Alan.
Uh-huh.
Quick question. So do you have any tools that you used in the past or our clients have used in the past that you want to refer? Just the names, a couple of them.
Couple of names. I mentioned Enable, or it was on a previous slide, but SAP offers Enable Now. Also on their price list is WalkMe. There's another tool called WhatFix, and these are all considered digital adoption platforms. Then there's simply creating YouTube videos or simulations with a whole multitude of third-party tools that are all useful and can create pretty interesting content.
Okay.
We were going on to secret number 4, I think. Looks like we have a quick preview of all the slides here.
I know.
And when we get to
was the plan
number,
anyway.
There we go. There. It's a good way to, repetition is a good strategy. So it's actually good to see these images once or twice to embed them and take away what some of the goals of the webinar. So this may look old-fashioned to say integrate hands-on practice, but what I mean is people need to talk through it, role play it, simulate it, envision themselves in the future before they get to the future. Before you start having them work in production, have them work in a training instance, or create simulations that allow people to step through in a simulated environment what the real tasks will be in production. And if they can recognize themselves in this day in the life scenario, it will have more relevance and it will resonate more and they'll gain more from it. So whether it's a simulation or a live role play or some other asset that'll help them practice, I think it's important to continue these kind of interactions in learning. It shouldn't just be a page turning event. People need to do something, talk about something, debrief about it to get the value of the exercise. The final secret, number 5, is that Go Live is not the be all end all. Remember that plan we talked about putting in place? It's critical to have a plan to help you achieve or reach cutover or go live, but please don't let your efforts stop there. An aspect of a change management plan to ensure adoption should be sustainment. And the sustainment section will identify where your assets will reside, where this content will be kept, and a process and people or resources to help keep the content useful and keep it up to date as needs change over time. So no longer do we talk about just pre-go live training or learning, but a solution that's good over time for new employees, for people who change jobs, etc. So putting it all together around the wheel, you'll have the best chance of accelerating adoption if you've got all these pieces of the puzzle dovetailed together. It's kind of a walkthrough of the methodology I've used for years, and I've adapted it over time as new tools and new methods have become available to us, and it still resonates.
All right, thank you so much for all that. So I guess it's time for one more polling question. So let's have the question. So here's a question, and I should get a pop-up for you to answer. How do you assess your ability to accelerate adoption? So we'd love to hear your answers. There's the pop-up. All right, do we have the results, please? All right.
Okay.
Alan, any interesting insights?
I would say that the majority say that they use a survey and or could use some help understanding how to track it. So thank you.
Good. All right. Thank you all for the participation. Appreciate it. So moving on, Alan, so what is the best way to assess an organization's user adoption needs and readiness?
Okay. The next slide. I normally suggest a structured conversation supported by a scorecard. And I mean, you could go various levels of depth, but you could start with an hour or two, and then you could get more in depth and really do deep dive into different discovery areas. Building on that, I wanted to show before we present a scorecard, I like Gartner's depiction of change management in that it articulates to start with understanding employee needs. Employees are engaged when you create them into a coalition group. And I agree with Gartner that quick wins are important to build credibility and to build momentum, but I don't think you should stop there. Throughout any transformation, if you can find ways to communicate, to educate, and encourage feedback, you'll empower people across the organization. if they feel like they're being heard. And I really say that seriously. Encourage feedback. Don't find ways to let people tell you what they think, and then use that input, fold it into the next phase. Finally, set in place a plan. Set in place the necessary resources to maintain program content and quality. So for the scorecard, next slide, please. This is a simple setup. It's not really interactive, but it was just meant to be illustrative. But there are 8 risk and readiness factors here. And this scorecard can be applied to any current or planned initiative, making it a part of a very early discussion during your pre-planning or prep phase will give you and your sponsors an idea of what level of change management support and investment may be necessary or recommended. Then, collectively, you can identify the best path forward and the choices you have to support it. Essentially, you're scoring yourself and the initiative from 1 to 10 on each of these factors. And the larger the number, the more attention you may need to place on change management. And on the lower side, it's maybe a simpler feat to achieve, but there may still be some planning involved and some connections to make with people, with sponsors, and with the rest of the workforce. So as an example, when you embark on a change management program, most practitioners use a set of tools that they've collected and honed over time. This dashboard includes some pictorials of things that assess and track various items: project risks, team risks, project team readiness, organizational readiness, progress over time, and change impacts. People get comfortable with the tools they use. Other organizations adhere to a particular change methodology, whether that be ProSci or something else. There's no one right way, but normally you go with what you feel fits your organization's cultures and need, as well as the particular initiative you're supporting. So I would say, to wrap it up, it takes an integrated set of tools and some experienced folks, whether those are in-house resource or partners, to engage, educate, and empower your workforce.
Awesome. Great points, Alan. Thank you for all that. So we are almost at the end, right? So we started like a few minutes late. So we're going to end a few minutes late. So I think hopefully it's okay with the participants. So we did sprinkle SAP a little bit here and there. We talked about cloud adoption a little bit, but we didn't go in depth. So we do have a plan, Alan and I, probably to come back with another webinar to focus more on change management, especially a little more deep dive of tools, the templates you can use, and how does SAP projects look like as far as change management goes. So with that, I think we are almost at the end, and we would like to see if there are any questions from the participants, and see if we can answer any. All right. If you do not have, you're always welcome to send us questions offline, and we would love to get in touch. Alan,
Hi,
any last words from you? Yep, sorry, go ahead.
Hi, this is Leslie Landry. I just had more of a comment just to say that this is the first time I've heard Ellen speak, but I thought it was an excellent webinar. I really liked your approach a lot. I love that you addressed the basics. I've listened to a lot of different webinars in change management, and I just thought this one was particularly good. And I also wanted, are you sharing this presentation or not? Is it possible to get a copy of the presentation?
Absolutely. Okay. We would love that. And thanks, Leslie, for those wonderful comments and kind words.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hopefully you'll come back for the next one. Like I said, that'll be more SAP focused, and we'll cover more of the tools and templates.
So do I need to send an email to Ellen to get the presentation, or you'll just send it out?
I think we'll probably make a link available to all participants.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Absolutely. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. All right, Alan, I'll let you wrap up and say, end this webinar.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to come together today with you, Kishore. It was fun. It's like module 1. And there's probably more topics we could expand on, but we'll leave those for another time. And in closing, appreciate everyone's time today. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.